Down on the Lawrence County Sportsnet, counting down the days until opening kickoff here of the top of the 2025 season. Looking at top players last week, top plays coming up, and we're looking back real quick before we get to 2025, looking at some of the top games from 2024. And we got the whole crew here. I'm James Dotson, Tim Continenza, Eric Thomas, Lee Moan, all will be chiming in. We took our best games of the year, the ones that we were in attendance for, put them in a ranking. We have each of our top three games of the 2024 football season. So with that, let's get right into it and take a look at what the gang chose as the top games from last year. Eric Thomas, we'll have you jump in to talk first about your games. We're going to see a bit of a trend here, but let's start with your number 3 game. We're going to go early in the season. Laurel against Mohawk, a big game there for both teams trying to bounce back after a week 0 game, and you were treated to a dandy in that one, a good high-scoring affair.
Yeah, and really that game comes out of nowhere because Laurel, who struggled for, I think it was 40 minutes, 47 minutes and 20 seconds or whatever it was in week 1 just to get a touchdown. And then that game against Elwood City goes to overtime. Hint, more on that in a minute. But yeah, that game, the second game, and Lucas Santini just coming out and throwing the football everywhere. We kind of got a little bit better of an idea what these teams were going to be the rest of the year. We knew that Mohawk was going to be good, but maybe they were going to have to kind of rely on the offense a little bit more. And they had no answer for Santini in that game. It went back and forth. We saw those two, Fadden and Santini, sling it all around, and that was remarkable. I like seeing teams. I like seeing the same team 2 weeks in a row to see what kind of improvement they make, because that first game, there's so many different variables that go into that first game. You're talking, the heat, the cramps, the first game. It's not practice against yourself. It's not a controlled scrimmage. You're finally going out there in the field against somebody else, and you don't know what you're really going to get a lot of the time when you get those first week games. But they came out the second week to Laurel, and man, they look like a completely different team. And we ended up seeing a different team later on in the year, but I really think it was that week 1 game, that second game of the year, that showed what they were going to be capable of the rest of the way.
Santini threw for 337 yards and 2 touchdowns, both going to Colton Carlson in that game, and 5 different receivers catching the football. I think the crazy stat, though, when you end up looking at it, is the fact they only ran for 26 yards in the contest. That's just telling when we get to your number 2 coming up, your number 2 team, or your number 2 game from last year.
That's the crazy part. We're talking about the bounce back for Laurel. Talk about the consistency of the Mohawk offense. They stopped the running game late. Mohawk's the team that got the win. It kind of felt like a win, I guess, in some ways for Laurel after how their offense had nothing in week 0. But it was Mohawk who put up their second straight 30-plus point game. They're the ones that get the win in that contest, but it did kind of feel like a win for both teams in a way.
All right, so let's look at number 3 on the top games from last year from Tim Continenza. Tim, you got to see a low-scoring slugfest on the road down in Hookstown, and a little trickeration getting Neshannock the win over Southside. A big game late in the year. That was Neshannock still looking for conference championship aspirations, and going into the bag of tricks with the reverse to Bayman for the long touchdown game winner. About 2 minutes left in that one.
Yeah, that was an exciting game, and when you can pull out something that is unexpected at that time of a football game, it's huge. And you get a Beeman who was able to run that reverse and be able to really turn on the Jets and get down and through the defense to make that play. It's huge, and that was a fun game to watch. Not all great games are high scoring games. Most games are probably under 20 points for both teams at the high school level, just because of the time constraints and how difficult it is to score in football at this level. And sometimes you just run into 2 good quality teams, and that's what that was. And it was fun to watch. I think Neshannock, that spurred them to that run towards the end of the season last year.
Yeah, and really that spurred Southside the other way because the following week Laurel came and absolutely controlled them
Yeah,
on the ground that following week. But Gino Mazzocco 2 touchdowns in that game running the football. Talk about a bag of tricks. That was Bateman's only rush of the entire season. So didn't see that one coming, did we?
no, we didn't. And it is one of those things. That's football when you least expected it. But obviously, I love the Shannick, just the style of play they play. They use their offensive line to control the game. They use their defense to try to keep you in striking distance, and then there's always that opportunity for that trickeration when you least in that game. So we'll have to wait and see how this year pans out. But yeah, that was a fun game last
Limon, you've got a plethora of games. I don't know how many games total you do last year. Probably 10,000
year.
high school games.
A lot.
A
A lot.
lot. As far as Lawrence County is concerned, what was your number 3 football game from the 2024 season?
The number 3 football game, we were going with the Western Beaver Union game. That was it. Had the pleasure to broadcast at Union High School, but just because of the quarterback is what I remember, and Jaden Peel, he was just to watch him in person, you could see all the talent. Unfortunately, he's not going to be playing in the WPIL this year, but he was a joy to watch in person. You can see he's gonna do some mighty big things in college if he continues to get better and stay healthy.
Yeah, Javen Peel reclassification. Yes, reclassifying is what I was trying to say there. Reclassification to the year 2028 and going to the Kiski school. But yeah, just he had a couple of impressive games that we saw last year for sure. Unfortunately for the likes of Union.
Yeah.
My number 3 game for 2024 wasn't the greatest game on paper. It was Neshannock defeating Rochester. Rochester, they were fighting so many injury battles themselves over the course of the year. That game just, I don't know, it stuck out to me just because of how Neshannock did something completely different in their offense. They went with in the wishbone style triple option, and Ashton Allison had a couple of rushing touchdowns in the game. It was just very memorable to me because of how different Neshannock came out and played in that game. Is one that was very memorable for me.
Thank you for calling Axe. Where can we take you today?
To work, to the store, to Grandma's house. Axe can get you there, but it's much more than a ride. It's a joyride.
I'm helping people. I'm getting them out of their house. I'm taking them to their doctors, to the grocery store.
They say I'm entertaining. Okay, we laugh, we joke, we sing, we tell stories.
They're like family to us.
Even if it's the same day, to schedule your joyride, call Axe today.
Eric Thomas, your number 2 game from last year, also featuring the Spartans near the end of the year, though. A must-win on the road down in Hookstown, and Laurel, a convincing win over Southside there in that Week 8 contest. One we thought that was going to be a good game. I don't think we expected the dominance, especially on the ground, that we saw from the Spartans in that game.
Yeah, we were not shocked that they won that game. We were shocked they won that game how they did, and that was they walked in there and controlled that game from start to finish. And that was the Southside team that, last year they had a couple of injuries that sort of prevented them from being what a lot of people thought they were going to be. And they're pegged as one of the favorites this year. But Laurel went down there and physically handled them. Defense set the tempo right away. Santini was good in that game, not great, but he was good. The running game was great against them. And Southside never had a chance to really come up for air. I mean, that Laurel defense suffocated them. And then you started thinking about, at that point, you're like, well, man, they might actually go to Neshannock next week and win that game and win this division. We don't know. Like, this team is just good up and down. And for me, though, it was really the defense. It wasn't about the game being a great game. It was about how they won that game. And it started fast on defense, and they just never let Southside up in that one.
Talk real quick about Jackson Saunders in that game. Colton Carlson, a couple of touchdown runs, but Saunders started the year as the backup quarterback or a Wildcat quarterback, 25 carries, the bell cow, 136 yards and a score, just showed the variety of what that offense could be, especially compared to the game we talked about earlier in the year where they had 26 total rushing yards in it, and they go and, again, control the game on the ground.
Yeah, they really did. And Colton Carlson was good on the ground too. 2 touchdowns in that game, 44 yards. Santini only attempted 11 passes in that game, and Carlson ended up, I think, catching 3 balls in that one. But yeah, the running game, they kept going. They just said, this is what we're going to do. You're not stopping it. We're going to mix in a pass here or there. We're going to get it in the hands of guys that can extend the field like Carlson. But for the most part, here's what we're running, and good luck. And that offensive line they plowed the way in that game. They took a ton of pressure off Santini. That was a big key going into that game. Could they run the ball? Could they make Luka comfortable? They did just that. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot. He did manage the game perfectly. Didn't throw an interception. Didn't throw a touchdown. Didn't have to because it did all the damage on the ground. And that offensive line was fantastic early on.
Tim Continenza, your number 2 game from last year. It took a while with the rain delays, but a fun back and forth effort. Elwood City able to stay undefeated in that week 3 game, 28-21 win at Neshannock, a historic win for Elwood City taking down the Lancers.
Yeah, that's really important part of that is the rain delays. You had the lightning strikes and you had to wait, and it was a one of those type scenarios. They did everything you could to get that game in, and they did. And for Elwood City to go on the road and get that win when they needed it most, and to beat a school that they always had trouble at on the road against was such an impressive thing, and it really set the tone. And I'll say this: I think Shannon kind of responded after that and played well the rest of the year. So that was really important to them on that level because they kind of got punched in the face at their own stadium and their own home turf. But you got to give it up to Elwood City that game. And it was the offensive line for Elwood City that controlled that game. They did what they had to do. The defense came up big, and special teams. There was a couple times special teams were took advantage of the short field and was able to give both teams an opportunity. So you got to give it up to Elwood City. I thought that was a huge win last year for them, and very seldom you ever see a win in week 3 and say that's the win everyone's going to be talking about during the regular season as the Wolverines made their move into winning the division and going into the playoffs.
Yeah, but that was a perfect non-conference win you needed before getting into conference play because they had a big game the following week where they beat Mohawk in another tight game. But
I think it proved to them that they could do it on the road. And any good football team has to go on the road and win big games. That's the ones you're always going to remember is when you get on a bus and travel, get off the bus, get ready to play a football game to succeed. That's when a team really shows its merit. Winning at home, you're expected to win at home. When you lose at home, it's difficult, to kind of bounce back. But when you go on the road and you're focused, you get on a school bus, you travel a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it may be. You get off the bus, you stretch, you get ready for a game. That was huge. And that was what Elwood City did last year. And they did it consistently. And that was impressive.
Shout out again to Elijah Palmer McCain. We're going to miss him on Friday nights, but 200 yards rushing, had a touchdown. He also caught a 59-yard touchdown pass in that game. Did a little bit of everything for that one.
Yeah, he did everything for that team. I mean, it's a big missing part, but I mean, that's part of high school sports. You don't always have players for 5 years. You only have them for 4. But it was an impressive season last year for Elwood City. But more importantly, that game to me was just the mental grind of it all. Because for Elwood City to get on a bus, like I mentioned, go to Shannock, deal with the rain delays, deal with the weather scenario, and come away with a victory, that really showed their merit. And I think every team needs to find that one signature win. That was Elwood City's signature win last year, no question about it.
Limon, your number 2 game from
My
last year.
my number two game, I'm going to go with the depressing loss, unfortunately, for Newcastle. Wasn't expecting Ambridge to come into Newcastle and get a victory out of that, and Ambridge surprised everybody, I think, and as Newcastle had a lead, and Ambridge came back and won that game.
Yeah, good come from behind road win. Unfortunate the way Newcastle finished that year, but battling some injuries down the stretch. And that conference is just so ridiculous. But going to be a lot of fun for the Canes this year. Unfortunately, they're on the wrong side of your number 2 game. But I think a good choice there, though, of a big win and a come from behind win nonetheless for the Bridgers. My number 2 game from last year, my number 2. Going to the playoffs, Mohawk first round game against Keystone Oaks, they jumped up in that game so strong. I want to say it was 28-0 even, maybe 28-7. But then Keystone Oaks came all the way back and tied it and really had a chance to even maybe drive down and get the win in the end. But Mohawk got a turnover when they needed it. They ended up getting the late touchdown and won it 35-28. And the Cass Stratton coming out party, 161 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. And I think Blake Logan actually broke the single season receiving record for Mohawk in that game in terms of reception. So just a lot of big things happen in that game.
Don't get left out to dry. Call the Penn Ohio Bottled Water Company for the fastest and most efficient bottled water delivery service in the area. Penn Ohio offers bottled water ranging from 16.9 ounce bottles to 5-gallon jugs, perfect for your next event or office water cooler system. Also, don't forget to ask about their custom labeling options. Visit PennOhioBottledWater.com for more information and to get a quote on their delivery services. Whether it's at home, in the office, or on the sidelines, Penn Ohio has you covered.
Eric Thomas, your number 3, Laurel against Mohawk. Number 2, Laurel against Southside. Number 1, well, we're sticking with the Spartans, but not on the side that the Spartan fans want to be hearing on this one. Going all the way back to week 0 a year ago, Eric, and overtime. A good choice for your number 1 pick.
Yeah, when they played Elwood at the start of the season, and it took them so long to score their first touchdown of the year, and their defense in that game, James, was so good. I mean, Elwood couldn't really throw the football in that game. They ran Elijah Palmer McCain a ton, and it was basically they knew what was coming from Elwood City, and they just kind of had to try to keep it in front of them. Remember, there was the 2 big plays in that game. There was Elwood not punting the football late in the game to play field position. Laurel had not shown they could go the length of the field the whole night. So Dan Bradley opts to go for it near midfield. They don't get it. And then there's a penalty on the ensuing play that sets Laurel up deep in Elwood territory for them to finally get the scoring, the touchdown to tie the game. And, you watch this go on, and you're scratching your head thinking like, well, why don't they just punt the football? Like, a lot of things can go wrong on the punt unit. And punting in high school is not really the greatest thing. We understand that. Not many teams have a guy that can really flip the field when he punts the football away. I still think you try to bury them as far as you can, given how they couldn't move the ball. They get the penalty, they get the touchdown, and it looks like every ounce of momentum is on their side. There's a couple of shaky kicks in overtime. There's, there was a running into the kicker after Elwood gets the go-ahead touchdown in that game. That game was up and down, a roller coaster. It was kind of, it wasn't flat in the sense that that it was over early in that game, but it was flat in the sense that every time Laurel got the ball back, you just kept thinking like, well, they can't score. So maybe this game's going to end 7-0, and then the decision to not punt, and it's like all hell just kind of broke loose in the last 40 seconds, and then carried over to overtime, and it was a wild game.
It was. In fact, yeah, you mentioned that running into the kicker. That was on a missed field goal attempt from Elwood City in overtime, and it gave them the extra down where Palmer McCain got his second touchdown of the game, and then Luciano Gagrick getting the interception in the end zone to end it for Elwood City. Oh, by the way, Palmer McCain became the all-time leading rusher in Elwood City history in that game as well. So also a little history in that fun one there between the Spartans and the Wolverines. They will have their rematch of that one in week 0. Our friends at ECS will have the coverage of that one. Tim Continenza, your number 3 was Neshannock defeating Southside on the road. Number 2, the Elwood City victory on the road as well against the Lancers to keep them undefeated at the time. Your number 1, I love this choice for number 1. One of the more electric games that I remember. You and I had the call for this one at Taggart Stadium. Newcastle comes from behind, defeats Knock 41-31. Let me just break down a couple of things because Newcastle was down with about 4 minutes left. They muff a punt inside their own 10-yard line. Knox scores. People are walking out of the building, out of the stadium, and we kept saying, you know how Newcastle scores quickly. This game is not over yet. And my word,
Only
in a
took
hurry.
about 10 seconds later.
Yeah, return the kickoff for the touchdown. Dim McKnight, and then they got the stop on defense they needed, and then the deep ball. I mean, it's going to be one of our Play of the Year nominations for sure. That 51-yard touchdown pass from Kyrell Harris to Nate McKnight for the go-ahead touchdown. They tacked on another touchdown in the waning seconds to win by 10. But man, that was just such a fun, electric game. Knox backup quarterback played so well. That was a great choice, Tim, for your number 1.
It just was what high school football looks like on a Friday night anywhere in America. And you just never know what you're going to find. That was a high-scoring game. It had big plays in it. You had individual efforts that were just terrific throughout the game, and it was a combination of different things. You had special teams. Anytime special teams makes a big play in a game, if it's a block punt, if it's a punt return or a kickoff return, it's such a dynamic momentum shifter. And that's what that was. And you've seen just the speed that both teams possessed in that game and the ability to make big plays, which is huge. It was I think it gave Newcastle the kind of a pat on the back, or more importantly, a belief that this program's headed back in the right direction under Coach Mazzocco as he gets ready, as he made his return to Newcastle last year. And I think that's, everybody in Newcastle was hoping the football program could be, because it was down for quite a long time. And now I think we're seeing the potential of that program rebounding to the levels for many years it was, and a big part of the flagship of Lawrence County.
Kayvon Gardner had 192 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground as well in that one. And that made Newcastle 5-0. Things were looking great. Obviously, you run into the juggernaut that Parkway Conference was last year. But I think you're right. It was the belief that was instilled in, like, hey, a game is never over. And, that it didn't pan out for the rest of that season. But I think that's a game that you are going to be, referencing if you're that coaching staff for the next 3 years, while you still have players who are in that locker room saying, like, hey, the game is never over with the guys that we have on the field.
Right. It doesn't sound impressive, but it really is. In the sense, anytime you can be 5-0, I don't care who you're playing, that's an impressive part of the season. I know it didn't go well the second half for Newcastle playing up like they are and playing in that conference, but that's just unfortunately the way it works sometimes. But more importantly, I think it is the belief that this program has the ability to compete. And for many years, 1 or 2 wins was a big year. And now you've seen 5 wins last year. And hopefully this year we'll see more of a ability to compete in the conference and see what's next. But I think that game, dynamic game, a lot of big plays, a lot of impressive plays, both offensively and defensively, special teams. I mean, what else could you ask for? Just one of the great Friday night games that we'll talk about for years to come, even though, like you said, had no consequence on a championship for either team.
All right, Lee Moan, your number 3 was Western Beaver over Union. Number 2 was Ambridge over Newcastle. I have a feeling I know what your number 1 game is going to be, going all the way back to week 0 from last year.
Yeah, what a way to break in a year. A 42-37 victory you heard that right. 42-37 victory for Mohawk against the Shannock. Throughout the defenses in that one. defenses got better as the year went on, but on that night, it was just a phenomenal offensive show at Mohawk. Was a blast to call that one.
Well, I mean, you don't want to say throughout the defenses completely, though. I mean, Dom Cubelos had a pick six that really sparked the Shannick
Yeah,
fourth quarter comeback, right?
yeah, true. But
Uh,
nonetheless, it was a lot of fun.
yeah,
As a,
and we get to see it right away this year too with that week 0 matchup. I'm glad that we can have real quick these county matchups like that, though, right, Lee, to be able to make those happen.
Yeah, I mean, it brings out everybody in the and the county, and one thing about the county too. I mean, they're enemies that night, but then you get away from that. The county is rooting for all these county schools, as they get together. So it's a lot of fun. Lawrence County is a special place.
My number one game, though, it's got to be the District 10 title game. Wilmington getting another gold uh, up there in District 10. And in a game that did not come easy, there were a lot of turnovers that Greenville capitalized on. There was an 80-yard hook and lateral. Well, not a hook and lateral. It was really just a long pass and a backyard football-style lateral that went for a touchdown. They went for a hook and lateral late on 4th and 28, and they got 26 out of the 28 on that final play. Just a lot of excitement, a lot of back and forth, and the M&M guys, Mitch Tree and Miller, both going over 100 yards. Just a lot of great stuff from those games. So my three were Neshannock defeating Rochester, Mohawk defeating Keystone Oaks, and Wilmington getting gold defeating Greenville.
That was a lot of fun recapping some of the top games from last year. And again, we all see the games a little differently, so kind of cool that we're able to get 12 different games listed as our top games from 2024. We'll see what games will make the list for this season. Again, big thanks to Lee Moan, Eric Thomas, Tim Continenza, giving us their countdown and joining us for some fun recapping of last year, but now time to look forward to 2025. We hope you're looking forward to the start of the season and more kickoff countdowns coming your way. Thanks to Penn Ohio Bottled Water as well. Always our powering sponsors, LCAP. And thank you, the fan, for tuning in live or archived on Lawrence County Sportsnet, powered by LCAP.